At the dawn of humanity, an act of betrayal sealed the fate of creation. It is said that Cain, cursed after spilling the blood of his brother Abel, was condemned to wander the land of Nod. But what if this curse was something more? A dark gift that transformed him into the first vampire, the progenitor of an immortal lineage that would shape the shadows of history. In this video, we will delve into the origins of Cain as described in mysterious texts like the Book of Nod, his connection with Lilith, and the curses that turned him into a creature of the night. We will uncover how he founded the mythical City of Enoch and how his legacy-shaped vampire clans up to the present day. If you watch until the end, you will uncover the secrets behind Cain's return and the apocalyptic event known as Gehenna, when he will pass judgment upon his vampiric descendants. After committing the first fratricide in history, Cain was condemned to wander eternally through the land of Nod, a realm of exile, cut off from divine grace. The punishment was more than just solitude. Cain was marked with a sign that set him apart from all men and made him a feared figure. The weight of his guilt plunged him into a spiral of sorrow and reflection, with each step in the land of Nod taking him further from his humanity. During his journey, Cain encountered Lilith, Adam's first wife, who lived in exile after defying divine order. Lilith recognized the mark of a divine curse upon Cain, but also saw in him a unique potential. She took him in, offering him solace and revealing her mastery of magical arts. Fascinated, Cain begged her to teach him her secrets, leading Lilith to perform the mysterious ritual of awakening. This ritual, involving her own blood, granted Cain unimaginable supernatural powers. After drinking from the chalice prepared by Lilith, Cain was visited by angels sent by God. Each angel offered him a chance at redemption, but Cain refused them all. With each refusal, a new curse consumed him: vulnerability to sunlight, weakness to fire, and an insatiable thirst for blood. Thus, Cain's awakening marked his ultimate transformation from human to something else, the first vampire, cursed with immortality and terrifying powers. With his newfound abilities, Cain severed ties with Lilith and set off to wander once again. He discovered the path of blood, a connection that would bind all beings of his future lineage. Yet, despite these gifts, Cain bore a profound emptiness. The guilt of rejecting redemption and the isolation brought on by his curse haunted him, turning him into a solitary and melancholic figure. But Cain did not remain alone for long. The story of the founding of the first city and his rise as the Dark Father is only just beginning. After years of wandering in solitude, Cain stumbled upon a small agricultural community called Ubar, inhabited by the children of Seth. The mark on his forehead and the powers he carried were so awe-inspiring that the villagers revered him, seeing him as a near-divine figure. In Ubar, Cain finally found a place where he could attempt to reconnect with humanity. Ubar was ruled by Enoch, a young and wise king who recognized Cain's extraordinary presence. Captivated by his strength and immortality, Enoch abdicated his throne so that Cain could rule the city. Under Cain's leadership, Ubar was renamed the City of Enoch and began to flourish in ways previously unimaginable. Cain's agricultural and technological knowledge, born of his life as a farmer and his travels through the land of Nod, transformed the city into a hub of power and innovation. However, despite the city's progress, Cain remained unsatisfied. His loneliness still haunted him, especially as he observed the love shared among mortals. Driven by a desire to recreate human connections and immortalize emotions he had long lost, Cain decided to embrace two mortal lovers, granting them the gift of immortality. But this attempt ended in tragedy. Upon discovering they could not bear children, the couple chose to end their lives by walking into the sunlight. Devastated, Cain vowed never to grant the gift of immortality lightly again. Yet, despite this promise, His solitude and Enoch's insistence eventually led him to create his first progeny: Enoch, Irad, and Zillah. Enoch was the first to receive the embrace, becoming Cain's right hand and the city's political leader. Irad, the second, was blessed with unparalleled strength, leading armies and safeguarding the city. Zillah, the third, was chosen for her immortal beauty, but struggled to accept her new nature. The bond between Cain and his children established a powerful lineage, giving rise to the second generation. Over time, Cain's children began to create their own progeny, forming the third generation, known as the antediluvians. Thus, the first city became the cradle of vampiric society, governed by Cain's laws and defined by a fragile balance between mortals and immortals. However, the fate of the first city was stained by intrigue and tragedy. The Great Flood would change everything, leading to the collapse of an empire built on blood and shadows. The first city, under the rule of Cain and his progeny, became a model of greatness. The technological and agricultural innovations, combined with the knowledge brought by Cain and his children, transformed it into a true empire. The city flourished with majestic temples, sanctuaries dedicated to the Dark Father, and an organized society that thrived under the protection of the vampires. At the heart of it all stood Cain's ivory throne, a symbol of his leadership. However, this harmony began to unravel when the third generation, the antediluvians, began to show ambition and a thirst for power. These newly created vampires, far removed from Cain's wisdom, did not share the same respect for the laws he had established. Their intrigues and manipulations put the city at risk, creating internal rivalries and instability among the emerging clans. The final tragedy came with the flood, a catastrophic event that many believe was a divine punishment for the accumulated sins of the city. The deluge devastated the first city, destroying not only the children of Seth, but also the temples, sanctuaries, and monuments built by the vampires. Many antediluvians and their progeny managed to escape, but vampiric society was left in ruins. Cain, overcome with sorrow at the sight of his creation in ruins, disappeared into the shadows. Some say he sought refuge in a distant place, unable to bear the weight of his guilt. Before leaving, Cain confronted the surviving progeny, rebuking them for their disobedience and placing a curse upon the antediluvians. Each clan would be marked by a unique weakness, reflecting the sins and flaws of their leaders. With the destruction of the first city, the vampires scattered across the world, rebuilding their society in a new city known as the Second City. However, without Cain's leadership, disputes and rivalries among the clans intensified, laying the groundwork for centuries of conflicts that would shape the history of the vampires. The destruction of the first city marked the beginning of an era of chaos for the vampires. Yet, the legends speak of an even darker fate: the return of Cain and the apocalyptic event known as Gehenna. Among the eldest vampires, the legends of Cain have never ceased to be told. While most younger generations question his existence, the antediluvians and their direct descendants know the Dark Father is real and fear his return. According to the Book of Nod, Cain will return at the end of times to judge his descendants. This event, known as Gehenna, is prophesied as the end of the vampiric race, marked by the collapse of the entire structure they have built over millennia. The prophecy of Gehenna is described as an era of destruction in which the antediluvians, ravenous for power, will awaken from their torpor to devour their own progeny. Amid this chaos, Cain will rise to destroy those who have dishonored his legacy, delivering a final judgment upon the vampires. While many dismiss Gehenna as a tale meant to instill fear, others view it as an unavoidable destiny. The Sabbat, known as Cain's sword, believes their mission is to prepare the way for the Dark Father's return and aid in defeating the antediluvians in the final battle. Interestingly, While the Sabbat venerates Cain as a savior, the Camarilla, another major vampiric sect, does the opposite. They deny the existence of Cain and Gehenna, going so far as to destroy any evidence or texts that mention the prophecies. For them, fostering such beliefs is a dangerous act that could spark panic among the kindred and destabilize their carefully structured society. Ancient texts suggest that Cain has never lost contact with the vampiric world. Some interpretations claim he observes his descendants from afar, testing them and waiting for the right moment to intervene. Rumors abound that he appears in disguise, manipulating events to ensure his return becomes inevitable. In modern stories, he is depicted as an ambiguous figure, times vengeful, at times merciful, but always mysterious and incomprehensible. But who was Cain, beyond the curse and the legends? His relationship with Lilith and the angels unveils profound secrets about his transformation into a vampire and his quest for redemption. Before Cain became the Dark Father, his path crossed with that of Lilith, the first wife of Adam. Exiled for defying God's commands, Lilith found Cain wandering in the land of Nod, marked and rejected. She saw in Cain a soul as cursed as her own and offered him shelter and compassion. However, her hospitality soon gave way to something deeper: mutual curiosity and an exchange of knowledge. Lilith possessed magical abilities that made her a figure of great power. Fascinated by her strength and wisdom, Cain begged her to grant him the gifts she possessed. Though hesitant, Lilith eventually agreed and performed the ritual of awakening, an act that forever changed Cain's destiny. She cut her own arm, letting her blood flow into a chalice that Cain was to drink. This mystical act transformed him, awakening powers beyond human comprehension. Shortly after the ritual, Cain was visited by 3 angels sent by God. Each angel offered him an opportunity for redemption for the murder of Abel. However, Cain, driven by pride and shame over his sin, refused their pleas. For each rejection, a curse was placed upon him. The sunlight, which once warmed his soul, now burned him. Fire, a symbol of purification, became a mortal weakness. And the insatiable hunger for blood consumed him, further distorting his humanity. After these visits, a 4th angel appeared, bringing a message of hope. The angel revealed the existence of a path called Golconda, through which Cain could eventually find peace and redemption. However, this path would be long and fraught with sacrifices, requiring Cain to confront his inner beast and reclaim his lost humanity. These experiences deeply marked Cain, both physically and spiritually. With the gifts bestowed by Lilith and the powers awakened by the ritual, he became an almost divine figure. However, the guilt over his choices and the loneliness brought by his condition led him to sever his ties with Lilith, abandoning her and resuming his solitary journey through the land of Nod. Armed with his new powers and burdened by his curses, Cain became the archetype of all vampires. But how did these gifts shape the structure of power among the clans and give rise to the lineage of the antediluvians? Cain's solitude eventually led him to create the 2nd generation, consisting of Enoch, Irad, and Zilitha, first vampires beyond himself. Over time, these 3 children, driven by the need for companionship and power, gave rise to the 3rd generation, the antediluvians. These would become the founders of the vampiric clans that would come to dominate the society of darkness. Each antediluvian inherited traits from their creators and added their own unique marks to their lineage. Thus, the clans were born, each with distinctive powers, weaknesses, and personalities, reflecting the curse and legacy of their ancestors. For instance, the Toreador inherited Zilla's artistic passion and obsession with beauty, while the Bruja absorbed Irad's strength and military leadership. These traits, while fascinating, also fueled rivalries, competition, and intrigue. that would shape vampiric politics for millennia. As generations expanded and clans proliferated, vampires began to organize into complex societies. However, Cain's distance and the growing selfishness of the antediluvians led to disobedience and conflicts. Many clans turned against one another, seeking to expand their spheres of influence at the expense of their kin. This dynamic of internal betrayals and relentless disputes marked the beginning of turbulent eras in vampiric history. Though distant, Cain observed his descendants. He knew that the ambitions of the antediluvians and the uncontrolled proliferation of younger generations threatened to destroy the balance. To reinforce his authority, he imposed a law. No progeny was to be created without his permission. However, this rule was ignored by many, resulting in a population boom that made vampires even more vulnerable to their own conflicts. With the decadence of the antediluvians, Cain's position as a figure of leadership was gradually challenged. Younger generations, who had inherited only fragments of the original teachings, began to question the legend of the Dark Father and even deny his existence. As a result, the clans fragmented into factions and sects, such as the Camarilla and the Sabbat, each with differing interpretations of Cain's role and the looming threat of the antediluvians. While the clans fought for control, Cain remained an enigma. Yet his influence endures to this day, whether as myth or reality, shaping vampiric societies and their destinies. In the eras that followed Cain's disappearance, vampires organized their societies around divergent interpretations of his existence and legacy. To the Sabbat, Cain is a central figure, a vengeful deity who will return to destroy the antediluvians and purify vampires of their corruption. The sect calls itself the Sword of Cain, believing its mission is to prepare the world for Gehenna, the vampiric apocalypse. On the other hand, the Camarilla adopts a skeptical stance, denying Cain's existence and rejecting the prophecies of Gehenna. They regard these stories as dangerous myths that threaten order. For the Camarilla, the focus is on maintaining the masquerade, the set of rules that shields vampires from discovery by mortals. As such, any reference to Cain or the antediluvians is deliberately erased or discredited, ensuring that these legends do not destabilize vampiric society. Meanwhile, smaller groups like the followers of Set interpret Cain's story through a unique lens, viewing him as a figure of power to be revered or, in some cases, challenged. Other factions, such as the Assamites, see Cain's lineage as a corruption that must be eradicated, fueling their own agendas and beliefs. Cain's impact is not only ideological. The hierarchical structure of modern vampires with its laws, traditions, and even the concept of clans derives directly from the foundations laid in the first city. Cain's legacy is also felt in the power dynamics between older vampires and younger generations. With each successive generation, vampires grow further removed from the raw power and wisdom of their ancestors, creating a divide that fosters fear and instability. Even in modern times, rumors of Cain's presence persist. Some believe he wanders the shadows, observing the behavior of his descendants. Reports of encounters with a mysterious vampire, possessing unparalleled powers, fuel these theories. To some, he is a savior. To others, a threat to the survival of vampires. Whether as myth or reality, the figure of Cain continues to inspire both devotion and terror among the kindred. Now that we've explored Cain's influence on modern sects, one question remains. Is it possible for him to truly return? And what would it mean for vampires to face the Dark Father at the end of times? The prophecy of Gehenna, the vampiric apocalypse, is one of the most feared and debated pillars among the kindred. According to the Book of Nod and other ancient texts, Cain's return would mark the culmination of an era of destruction, when he would emerge from the shadows to judge his descendants. But what does Cain's return truly mean? And what would be the consequences for the vampiric world? Some believe that Cain will return as an unforgiving avenger, determined to eradicate the antediluvians and purge the corruption that has spread among vampires. To these individuals, the Dark Father would bring ultimate balance, destroying those who have abused his gifts and dishonored his legacy. This belief fuels the fervor of the Sabbat, who see themselves as fighting alongside Cain when Gehenna finally arrives. Other interpretations suggest that Cain does not seek vengeance but redemption. His journey through the land of Nod, his interactions with Lilith and the angels, and even his curses could be seen as signs of a quest to reconcile with God and find peace for his immortal soul. If this interpretation holds, Gehenna may not be an event of destruction but one of renewal, with Cain guiding the remaining vampires toward a new purpose. Conversely, there are those who view Cain's return as the greatest threat to vampires. If the Dark Father were to decide that his creation was a mistake, he could seek to annihilate it entirely. The antediluvians, despite being feared, might be the only forces capable of opposing him, leading to a war of unimaginable proportions. These scenarios fuel the skepticism of the Camarilla, which prefers to deny the possibility of Cain's return, as confronting it would mean acknowledging the fragility of vampiric society. To this day, the mystery surrounding Cain endures. Reports of sightings, hidden texts, and inexplicable events continue to fuel speculation about his existence. Is he a silent observer, waiting for the right moment to act? Or is he merely a myth, used to instill fear and maintain control among the kindred? Regardless of the truth, the legend of Cain serves as a grim reminder that at the heart of all vampiric history lies a figure whose actions echo through every generation. When Gehenna arrives, if it ever does, the world of vampires will be forced to confront its origin and its destiny. And when the Dark Father returns, he will bring the final answer: the judgment of his descendants or their redemption. The story of Cain is more than a tale about the first vampire. It is a reflection on guilt, power, and legacy. Whether as myth or a truth, his impact transcends generations, shaping the vampiric world in profound ways. In the end, it is up to each to decide: is Cain the savior or the ultimate doom?